Tip number 1, if you're paying more for flavoured popcorn as a healthy alternative to crisps, then you're likely being led down the garden path. So dietitian Anna Daniels said, if it says sweet on the packet, there's a chance it has way more sugar than crisps. So some popcorn has 50 grams per 100 grams, so it's like half sugar. The show found that some popcorn brands have got more salt and calories than crisps also, so choosing salted popcorn isn't necessarily a fix either if you're concerned. So they put big brand crisps and popcorn in order from lowest to highest calorie on the TV show Super Shoppers, and one of the big brands, salted popcorn, had 27% more calories than, say, proper corn's lightly sea salted at the other end of the scale. No pun intended. Not all calories are created equal, so they were only comparing like a number of popcorn and crisps brands, but it's just to give you an idea that there can be like quite a big difference in the nutritional value of what you're buying. So in a taste test, the most calorific was more popular on the street than proper corn by 1 vote. Now, popcorn does have more fibre than crisps, I think you'll find. I'm pretty sure another dietitian, Priya Chu, who does quite a lot for television, I'm pretty sure she recommends it to families for snacking on Eat Well for Less for that reason, instead of crisps, just because of the higher fibre content. So the most economical way around this is to make your own, and then you know exactly what's on it. And it's also cheapest to buy corn in bulk and pop it yourself. If you really don't want to do that, just don't assume that paying more automatically equals healthier, whatever your definition of health is. So if you've got it in mind that you want to eat less sugar, or that you're picking up something that's lower in calories, lower in salt, it's not necessarily the case if you're swapping crisps for popcorn. Tip number 2. So apparently 1 in 5 of us are teetotal these days. I'm definitely drinking less alcohol. Alcohol-free beer tends to be more expensive than alcoholic beer though, which is disappointing because they don't pay beer duty. It's because it's an expensive and sophisticated process to take alcohol out without losing the flavour in theory. I talked about flat whites in a previous episode and why coffee chains charge more for them when they were new, and they've maintained that. So while the product is novel, it's in a brand's interest to set a precedent. I don't think they want to set a precedent, that's something else altogether. Set a precedent that it should be more expensive than normal beer. Or if you're not comparing, for them to set a higher baseline as the beer market's predicted to decline anyway, so it's in their interest to kind of establish the idea that you just should pay more for alcohol-free beer, because they've got to invent a way to protect their future business if beer sales are going to continue to decline when it's alcoholic beer. So this is a form of price establishing. I'll talk about that separately elsewhere in more detail. So they did a taste test on the TV show Super Shoppers with students, and apart from one student who recognised Brewdog's Nanny State in a blind taste test, and that was because he drinks it so regularly, he was able to recognise it even though they were taste testing these different alcohol-free beers without knowing in advance what they were drinking. Otherwise, they couldn't tell the difference generally between the alcohol-free and the alcoholic. So apart from the Brewdog fan who admits that he would normally pay more anyway because he prefers the taste, they thought they would rather spend less and drink alcoholic beer because they didn't see the value in paying more to get something that's alcohol-free if it tastes the same. You know what I'm going to say if you've listened before. Hold your own taste test. Check out the ones linked in the show notes and I'll share any of mine. See what you prefer, you might make a saving. Tip number 3, if a product has a thin and a standard version. So this is, you'll see it with biscuits, bread, crackers, even cheese. The thin version regularly costs more per 100 grams than the standard version. But they also found that some items actually have more calories or fat per 100 grams in the thin recipe. Also, because the thins are advertised as being only 100 calories and are in smaller portions, obviously, we're actually likely to eat more than we would if we just bought the normal version. So don't automatically assume that there's a saving in buying the thin version of a product, and don't automatically assume that it's healthier by your definition. The opposite is more likely to be true. You can even buy flatbread thins. It's flatbread. If it gets any thinner, you'll be eating fresh air, which is free. not something that I promote. So following on from the popcorn versus crisps dilemma and continuing a snack theme, so tip number 4 is don't pay more for veggie crisps versus normal crisps in the assumption that it's healthier. So if that's the reason you're paying more, check the saturated fat, as they often have more saturated fat in veggie crisps. So nutritionist Lucy Jones recommended to the show Super Shoppers that you eat a maximum of 20 grams saturated fat daily. The Food Standards Agency classes more than 5 grams per 100 grams as high. So Lucy explained that the easy way to think of saturated versus unsaturated fat is that saturated fat is solid at room temperature. So oils like olive oil have unsaturated fats because they're in liquid form. Butter has more saturated fat, and the clue to that is that it's solid, which doesn't mean that you can never eat it. It's just something that we would normally eat smaller portions of. Lucy was able to overflow a mixing bowl with 340 grams of potato crisps, but only 80 grams of vegetable crisps still had more saturated fat. So the proportion of potato crisps that you could eat compared to vegetable crisps and still consume less saturated fat, you could eat a lot more potato crisps basically. So one sharing bag of vegetable crisps that they found had 11.3 grams per 100 grams, or just 9 grams in that one sharing bag. So that's obviously, according to the Food Standards Agency, that would be high in saturated fat. So if you were eating that bag with the idea like, well, it's vegetables, it's healthier, and paying double for it, you've been misled, or you've misled yourself. So Lucy said this was because the brand in question had cooked them in palm oil, so that had enhanced the saturated fat versus other brands that use sunflower oil. Now, if you see a message saying that something is one of your 5 a day on the bag, they're not wrong in a way. Potatoes don't count as one of your 5 a day. That's a sort of a common misconception. But vegetables obviously would normally. However, vegetable crisps have obviously been processed to an extent. So as long as a brand isn't using the one of your 5 a day official logo, they can put in the marketing on their packaging that something's one of your 5 a day, regardless of any other kind of nutritional value. So regardless of whatever else they've done to those ingredients, that might then kind of distort things so that it's not really the same as, you know, eating a raw handful of broccoli, if that's something that you think would be healthy to do. Let's move on to some random saving, shall we, and see what lands. So just like when a brand convinces you you needed something you hadn't given much thought to, I'm going to aim to convince you with these randomers that these were issues you were dying to solve and you just didn't know it yet. So these are creative tips to save money on purchases in the sense that they're a bit unusual. Some of them are big ideas, some of them are small. They're probably not the first thing that comes to mind, but it pays to go off the beaten path sometimes and see if there's another way of thinking about what you're about to buy so that you can keep more of your money to yourself. The first tip in the UK is just that, did you know that Argos and Sainsbury's often charge different prices for the same product under the same roof? So many Sainsbury's stores now have Argos outlets indoors, so they might be selling exactly the same product. In one part of the building it'll be in the Argos shop, and in the other part of the building it's under the Sainsbury's brand, and it's exactly the same but it's priced differently, so one item will be cheaper. So it always pays to double check before you buy. They also say on the Argos website that Tu clothing should be treated as a totally separate entity, so they don't price match, and that the price of Tu clothing from Argos might be totally different to Tu's website and different again to Sainsbury's pricing of Tu. That was something I noticed. That's Tu, TU, by the way, if you're wondering why I keep saying Tu. So the way to think about savings going forward, or savings on your spending that you were going to do anyway, is that even when brands have a very close relationship and can be found together under one roof, still treat them as separate and always do your price comparison. The second quick random tip is you probably don't need to buy or spend a lot on shoe insoles and cushions for high heels. So do you buy insoles normally, or have you got high heel cushions lying around at home and you wonder why you bothered? So the show super shoppers found in the lab that these high heel cushions reduce pressure by only like 1 to 6%, which is sort of the same as saying they do sweet FA that you're actually going to notice. If more of us are going alcohol free, I like to think that comfortable footwear on a night out is going to become a more noticeable need. The podiatrist said that the only way to reduce the pressure more than this would be to wear a shoe with an inch less on the heel. That's you two boys. They tested a big brand versus a pharmacy owned brand and a high street discount brand. Obviously there are lots of different versions out there and that's only 3 of them, but it just sort of implies that paying more isn't necessarily going to make a groundbreaking difference. So if you want to wear heels, either suck it up and save your money, or you'd wear a lower heel or no heel at all. And if you're wearing flat shoes anyway, I'd ask if that insole really makes a difference before you lose your cash. I've suggested before on the blog that selling your car is one way to really kickstart a savings goal because it could provide a big cash injection in one go. And a lot of us are resistant to that because we're maybe set in our ways and think it gives us a certain freedom, even though having a car often makes it too easy to go out and buy big expensive things, or it just feels like too big a change to sell a car. Depending on how much your car is worth, you could consider just getting a cheaper car that's also cheaper to run if you really can't face the thought of going without completely. And I say this as someone who has spent plenty of time waiting on train platforms for cancelled and delayed trains, but you can also do things with season tickets, like ask your employer for a 0% loan for the ticket and invest your own money because you'll usually only pay them back in monthly installments. So any money you put aside in preparation for the season ticket, you can put into savings instead. And I also say this as someone who owns a car but it's not worth anything, so I haven't sold it. If you do sell up, you don't have to be stranded. There's also car sharing clubs now. Or are you afraid to hire a car in case they charge you for damage that you didn't cause? So this tip is several tips in one on how not to get stung by car rental companies. One dude had over £2,000 worth of repairs charged to his credit card when he hadn't had any scrapes. Now the show super shoppers found it's hard to prove that the repairs you're charged for actually take place when you're charged for them, and some companies' terms and conditions don't make any allowances for wear and tear. So you could be paying for a 5-year-old scratch and you hand that money over, the scratch doesn't get repaired, the next person hires the car, gets charged for the scratch that was already there, it doesn't get repaired, and that just goes on and on and on. And the only way around that is to really prove that you're not responsible for that wear and tear or any previous damage. So to avoid this, you can take photos and videos with proof of the date of the condition of a car before you drive away. Check reviews for the hire company online. Also use a credit card to pay, as you can also raise a complaint with your credit card provider if you think you've been charged unfairly. In fact, I very rarely use a debit card because if you make most of your purchases on a credit card, then you always have that protection, but do make sure you pay it off in full to avoid interest or before the 0% interest period ends. So certain brands I think you'll find allow for wear and tear. I think Hertz, Enterprise and Avis in the past have allowed for it. Always check for up-to-date information when you hire though. If a company tells you that they don't allow for wear and tear and that's because it's in line with industry standards, that's not technically correct. So you could either challenge that ahead of time or just make sure that you pick a brand that does allow for wear and tear just in case before you hire. Time to slow it down now for a product test. What is the difference in quality when you buy designer fabrics versus supermarket clothing, and how creative can we get when it comes to saving money on clothes? So the show super shoppers took cashmere as an example. Now I'm recording during summer, so you're possibly not thinking about cashmere right now, but I believe winter in the UK also lasts September to May anyway, and you might be listening to this further down the line or somewhere chilly. Apparently Orkney ranks one of the best places to live in the UK, but I think it's also bloody cold nearly all year round, so I'm going to include this tip anyway, especially as ever. I'm going to explain to you how you can apply this to other things even if you have sweet FA interest in wearing cashmere anytime soon. So the TV show said designers should really use longer fibres in their fabric. This makes the knit denser. You'd also expect the designer item to have widening marks on the shoulders. I think that's to do with the movement of the fabric when you wear it. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. You want more expensive detailing, and you expect there to be, no sort of wonky stitches. No one wants wonky stitches now. So they send a Florence and Fred, which is Tesco brand sweater for £45 to a Textile Lab to compare with a John Lewis £99 cashmere sweater. So they test it for pilling, shrinkage in the wash, and the length of the fibres. Now the John Lewis one did have significantly longer fibres, as you'd expect from a designer fabric, which they would normally associate with better quality. However, they both shrank and pilled. Now, the Tesco one shrunk slightly worse in the wash, and it also puckered around the neck. They thought the results were acceptable for the price though, and they said some shrinkage is expected for this kind of fabric no matter what you pay. I think this is probably a bit like swimsuits, so no matter how much you pay, the sun and seawater or swimming pool water and just wearing a swimsuit all lead to wear and tear quite quickly, so that the majority go baggy eventually, whether they're designer or not. So if you want to save money on clothes shopping, you can choose your fabrics carefully if there's a lot of choice in the category, so with something like a sweater. But if there isn't much choice by default, you wouldn't go swimming in a cashmere swimsuit, or you still prefer a certain fabric, just match your expectations to reality and remember that paying more won't necessarily get you more. Now, in a street test, 6 people preferred the appearance and texture of the John Lewis sweater versus 4 people for the Tesco one until they found out the price. This is quite a small sample, but it seems that if we're the one paying, we're happy to shift our preference. So paying more might get you some extra quality markers. I'd definitely expect a more flattering design and a cut that's consistent across sizes. So sometimes the quality issue with fast fashion is just that nothing in the shop is consistent, right? Even if you can't find anything wrong per se with the item you're holding. So is there anyone here who is a size 8, 10 and 12 all in one shop? Or if you're a dude, have you got stuff in your wardrobe where like the waist measurement is totally different from one pair of trousers to the next, even though they all came from the same shop? Because there's just a few brands, they seem to have an issue with their sizing and their fabric cutting. More on that in just a sec. So I think we're moving a lot more as a nation towards slow fashion though also, so some of us are paying more for sustainability or quitting buying clothes altogether, which is sustainable. I bought a pair of shoes last year. That was the first pair I bought for at least 3 years, and the pair before that I didn't pay for because they were a present. So the last time before that I paid for shoes personally, I want to say was 2012, and that was at the Vacaville outlet in California, so I was discount shopping anyway. And the last time I remember buying an item of clothing, I try to remember, I think it was 2013. I bought 2 coats. This is why I don't shop for clothes very often. I couldn't decide, so I bought 2 coats in a sale. There's only one of me. I can only wear 1 coat at a time, so why did I need to buy 2? So my solution to that is just to not go shopping, and I don't need to because I've got at least 2 coats. So could you go the next 7 years without buying another coat or a pair of shoes? And if not, why not? Do you genuinely have a minimalist wardrobe where if something goes kaput this year, you're going to be walking around naked? Or is it just that you feel that you need more than you do? It's like, I've got like quite a few hoodies and warm layers and scarves and gloves. They seem to breed. I'm not sure what goes on there because I don't buy them, and yet I've got too many of them. So I might never buy a coat again. I'm just going to layer up in future if one of those coats goes to clothes heaven. And I say that as someone who believes that winter lasts from September to May in the UK. So I didn't buy all of those accessories necessarily. I still have a scarf in mint condition that I was given when I was like 10. And this is the thing, the more you own, the less frequently you use things, they end up lasting for years, providing that they don't automatically shrink and pill in the wash and go baggy around the neck. Now, why did I keep going shopping therefore? What if, unlike me, you haven't had a clothes shopping addiction in the past, your wardrobe already looks a bit like Steve Jobs, and you really do need to replace things now and again? Or you could just be like the guy with the broken flies who hosted a walking tour I went on once. He was just like, I only own 1 pair of jeans, so if the flies are broken, the flies are broken. I don't really recommend that approach. Especially, I think one of the walking tours nearby was like a hiking tour in the woods. I think people are going to get the wrong idea if you're walking around nature with your flies undone. So I'd like to argue that you shouldn't have to pay more for sustainability, and if brands can't offer that, then there is always the second-hand market if you really must pick up some more clothes. And sometimes the second-hand market still means brand new if you want to think of quality that way. So if you go to a charity shop in an affluent area, you'll find, in theory, designer clothes with the tags still on. Will they be better quality, or will they just look more tailored? So one final thing I'd add is to think about that exactly. Most of the people wearing designer clothes can also afford a tailor, and in my opinion 90% of what makes an outfit look expensive is just down to how well it fits. So if that's the trouble in your existing wardrobe, instead of chucking it all out or donating it and then going shopping again, would a nip and a tuck here and there breathe new life without the need for fast fashion? You'll probably spend less on average overall, plus you could be helping someone with a small tailoring business. Who knew that hiring a seamstress was a way to save, eh? One more random tip. When a retailer asks you to pick the promotions you want to be emailed about, this is a double-edged sword. So on the one hand, you only see the stuff that's relevant to you, but because it's relevant, you're more likely to be tempted, as you already know they're mainly going to send you sales emails anyway. So if you really want to resist temptation, just unsubscribe today from all the shops that are in your inbox. Similarly, I'd add you can also delete all the shopping apps on your phone. You can delete your payment details stored on any websites, and the next time you shop as a guest. All of these things add friction. It makes it much less likely that we'll impulse buy. If you're finding this helpful so far and you're able to, just hop into the comments and let me know why, or if you've got any tips of your own to add. To the dude on Instagram who follows me, who's selling a money ebook which is permanently 50% off, you should perhaps stop doing that. Now let's talk about how to stop shopping in the sales, possibly at all, since sales seem to be a permanent all year round fixture now. Unlike when I worked in retail, once upon a time we had definite sale periods. Does anyone else remember that? Never mind. These also count as minimalist money saving tips. If you want to know how to save money like a minimalist, you have to shop like a minimalist. It's important to understand price establishing. Impulse buying sucks. You see something on sale, but it's only on sale because they bumped up the price for a few weeks beforehand. Now the same item might have actually been cheaper a year ago. Now brands blame this on having promotions regularly throughout the year for things like Black Friday. There's a UK law surrounding this, but the wording is quite complex. The crux of it is that businesses aren't meant to mislead consumers. However, as a general principle, an item shouldn't be advertised as on sale if it spends longer on sale at the reduced price than the full price. So to the dude on Instagram who follows me, who's selling a money ebook which is permanently 50% off, you should perhaps stop doing that. So if you see something on sale and you see underneath the dates of when it was listed at full price, if it's been at the reduced price longer, then really you're just buying it at the selling price. This is the way to think about this. Don't tell yourself you're getting a bargain. When you remove the idea that it's a bargain, do you realize that you don't really want it after all? That you don't really need it? Just like a minimalist would. Try to shop strategically if you're going to shop at all. So it seems like we have sales all year round now. There used to be a sales season and now they just never really end. However, January should still be the best time to buy things like evening wear and heavyweight winter coats and anything that was sort of packaged for Christmas. So also Christmas gifts are easy to stock up on in January. I'd add if it was like toiletries, you're often still better off buying them individually if it's for your own use, because even a reduced gift is sometimes still at a premium because you're just paying for a nice box with snowflakes on it, even if it's in the sale. On the other hand, things like jumpers and socks and hats and gloves are often marked up before Christmas still, and that's price establishing again, isn't it? So you're going to need gloves in a second, just wait and listen. I'm recording this in summer, so obviously I'd expect to pay a markup on anything summery at the moment, but that, you know, if that's something that they do sell all year round, the price was probably bumped up when the good weather came along, and then it's so that it can then get reduced. If you're wary of the idea of buying something in September reduced because you're like, well, I don't know if it will fit next year or if we're going to have a decent summer next year, because as Shane Meadows would say, this is England. Easiest way around that: don't buy anything. I've cracked it, everyone. I've found the solution. Minimalism for the win. It's like minimalism, only better. So this not as quick tip is to understand scarcity. So that's anything that says something is a limited offer. It's to make you feel like you're going to miss out if that thing goes away. Now, if you needed an excuse to take action on something you need and you've been wanting to get it for a long time and it's genuinely a good deal. If you've wanted something for a long time, you've been researching it, comparing prices, that might be easier to tell. So for instance, if they're not abusing price establishing, then by all means go for it. It's your money, you can buy what you like. Responding to scarcity only becomes a spending problem for us when we impulse buy something we didn't even need. It's how the mystery aisle works in discounters, right? So if you're tempted by a flash sale, learn first what that retailer's behavior is, because a lot of brands, this happens with hotel brands actually. So hotel brands have a reputation for running their flash sales back to back. So resist the urge if something's ending in 48 hours and then check again the next day, or you might find you get an email the very next day and there'll be another sale that looks exactly the same as the one that just ended. So with hotels, it's often cheaper to book direct anyway, so check that too, especially after taking exchange rates into account. If you think you've seen some odd price establishing behavior, so for instance, if on a hotel website it shows a rate with the line through it as the standard rate and it's more than what the hotel is charging you directly, the online hotel brands or comparison sites would say that that's because the hotel determines what the so-called standard rate is. So it's not their responsibility if the hotel then charges you less to go direct, or if you can't find that standard rate anywhere, because it will have just been whatever the hotel said the standard rate was when they got listed on that website. The other thing to be aware of is that when it says prices from, so for instance, the TV show Super Shoppers found on one website that one hotel only had 4 rooms. So when it said prices from £46, there was actually only one night that year where you could book at that price. But again, the website is going to argue that they can't help that if a hotel has limited availability. So it's just understanding what really is a deal. So base your value assessment on other factors, like are you getting the amenities that you want on the dates you want to travel, if it's hotels, or if it's a flash sale for any other type of shopping, do you really need it? Are you just looking because it says flash sale and you're worried that it's going away at midnight? Why are you worried? Because it wasn't something that you were planning to buy when you got up this morning. It's okay, you can relax. There might just be another flash sale tomorrow and you probably don't need to look at that one either. Also with travel sites, just be careful that as you move through the booking that the discount remains consistent. So Super Shoppers also found on one booking site that when you clicked on a 59% off discount on the booking page, it was 56% off in real terms, because they're taking the discount off a different starting price. Now that difference, if you're say booking a package holiday for a whole family that's 4 figures overall, that little percentage difference could add up to quite a lot of money for you. The travel agent blamed this on a glitch in the matrix. That wasn't their exact wording, but that's essentially what they were getting at. The bottom line is just double check and decide for yourself what represents good value for you, rather than just being led by the fact that there's a discount being advertised when that discount might have been distorted by price establishing, or it might be as part of a sale which is running out at midnight, but it's just going to be back on again tomorrow and next week and the week after that. Another tip, which I've actually mentioned within nearly all the other tips, is just to stop and ask, do I really need this? Now, it's easier said than done. I have a test in a blog post called the Should I Say No test if you want to train yourself in this area, or have some questions to hand to challenge yourself if something's got to give and you've tried everything else when it comes to stopping impulse spending. I'll link to that in the show notes for you, see if it helps. The next tip is don't touch inside shops. Touching releases endorphins. I'm still talking about shopping, by the way. It makes us more likely to purchase. So I mentioned this in a previous episode regards brands like Fevertree, which are priced higher and come in these heavy glass bottles, which kind of communicates a brand message to us through touch, because we're very tactile, and if we can feel like the weight of something, it just communicates a message that something should cost more. I mean, glass does literally cost a brand more to package. I mean, it's heavy, so it costs more to ship, but it also sends a message to the consumer that we're supposed to pay more. So when we start getting our grubby fingers on things in the shops, it feels good to be tactile, but it also kind of draws us into our subconscious reaction to certain materials. Shops get really hot though, so I think the only way to not touch anything is to maybe go out in gloves and no coat and just shop wearing gloves. Some of us might be used to that anyway after the whirligig of fun that has been the first half of 2020. If you're going to that extreme, maybe just don't go to the shops. I can send you a list of books to read instead if you want to stop shopping as a hobby, or things to listen to while out for a walk or out and about, or things to watch. Just tell me and I'll save you from yourself. You'll be fine. You'll be a true minimalist apart from all those library books. I'm not a minimalist, by the way, but I have learned how not to shop. And one of the ways that I learned how not to shop was to stop touching things in the shop.